And so they're very interesting books, and I do recommend that people read them. I would read everything because I feel like if you put and you read everything and you get the experience of everything out there, then you can find a underlying truth behind all of them, and then it sort of joins together as a jigsaw puzzle, of truth, and then it reveals itself in your pursuit, and this is just one of the things that I learned.
Now, are you religious in nature yourself?
No, I'm not at all, really. I never really... My father was a Catholic. My mother was a Presbyterian. My ancestry, my family is Yaqui Indians on my father's side, and which is shamanism, and my mother's family was Shinto Buddhist, but I was able to pursue whatever I wanted to, whenever, because my parents never pushed me into one thing or the other. And early in my life, I was not very religious. I didn't go to church and go to Sunday school, but I was a lover of the Father, and I was seeking Him in my own way. And I, even in my teenage years, I spent 4 years living in a van, traveling around the country, and going to different places, just in a spiritual pursuit. And so this, and I was also writing poetry and reading books, and this is what came out of all that.
Well, let me ask, when you're doing this now, and the reason I wanted to know about your religious background is the fact that a lot of people have heard of these other deals and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi. How do we know that that's not, you know, I mean, because a lot of those stories contradict a lot of the stories in the Bible. I mean, I know there's some of these scriptures that have appeared that actually tell stories of Jesus as a child. You know, one of the stories is basically about Jesus kind of getting pissed at another kid and just staring at him, and the kid dropped dead. And are you familiar with that story and some of the things I'm talking about with this?
Well, I don't know if that's the story as I've read it. I know what you're talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
They're from the Protevangelion of James, and that's a 2nd to 6th century collection. And I think the story you're referring to is this one particular kid that was on a roof, and they said that Christ had pushed him off, and he was accused of pushing the child off. And what happened is Christ went down to the young kid and raised him from the dead, and then asked him, asked him if he had pushed him off, and the young boy said that he hadn't. But all of the people and the kid's parents did accuse him of pushing him off. And I'm not if that's
that's one of the stories that I'd also heard. Yeah, but there was also another group of kids that were teasing Christ. And when he turned, you know, at first he tried to walk away from it. When he turned back, I believe it was just one of the kids he glared at, and the kid just hit the ground.
Really?
Oh, you know what? I actually do remember that. Right. You're right.
So there's some of these stories that, you know, showing how human he really was at points, but they don't want that to be heard. Now, that would seem to benefit the enemy, if you would, Lucifer, to hear these stories and to plant the seed of doubt about their perfect incarnation of God on earth. You know, and that's why I was curious what your take was on religion, if you were coming at it from a very religious background. But, you know, like you, I'm intrigued to read all the different versions of all these stories and hear what it says. But it makes me wonder, you know, what's real and what is somebody else's agenda put into this book. Just like we can easily say that the Bible itself is the agenda of the Roman Catholic Church and their version of what we should read. And they've made no bones about the fact that they pulled books out, including the Book of Enoch, which is referred to throughout the Bible in different spots, but then they don't even use the Book of Enoch in the Bible. So
absolutely. And they did that in order to keep people from realizing the truth. And so, yes, and that's why, and I use this in my book, because, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the church authorities, even the Roman Catholic Church now and the Vatican, they were the ones that have been hiding information from the masses and keeping people from knowing the truth. Even there was a text called the Gospel of Bartholomew, and in this text they proved that Christ came back exactly 5,500 years after Adam and Eve were banished from paradise, and he came into the flesh in order to die on the cross and bring salvation to the world. But in this particular text, they add up from the time of Adam and the generations, all the totality of years, and it exactly adds up to 5,500 years. And they realize that he was the revelation of all those prophecies, but yet they hide it, and they agreed to hide it. They don't want anybody to know about it, and at the end of the text they declare that in the text that they're keeping that information away from the people.
And now, what can you tell people about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Because I've always thought that that's what was found when the clay pots, when the boy was throwing the rocks and hit the clay pots, that it was the Dead Sea Scrolls. Was that a different story, or?
I may be crossing my stories, and they could be the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it also happened in a similar fashion for the Nag Hammadi codices as well.
And for our listeners, too, that are interested, the Dead Sea Scrolls, you can actually see a great exhibit about the Dead Sea Scrolls right here at the Science Museum of Minnesota, and that takes place between March 12th and October 24th, 2010.
That
would be cool. Awesome.
Right, so it's taking place right now at the Science Museum of Minnesota, and you can get information about that by going to, actually, if you go to www.smm.org/scrolls, you'll find information about that, or just go to the Science Museum of Minnesota's website, and you can get tickets. It's an amazing opportunity. I think the phone number is 651-221-9426. That's 651-221-9426, and you can actually go see the Dead Sea Scrolls and see the amazing history that goes about this. Now, talking about some of the other pieces, and we want to get through them quickly, the Apocrypha, can you explain to some of the people what the Apocrypha is?
The Apocrypha is still part of the Catholic Bible, and it's just like a secretive collection of books that is not included in a lot of the people's canon of the Bibles. It's only in the Catholic Bible, I believe, and it's just a collection of other books that were also left out. We have 66 books in the canon of the Bible. There's 10,000 texts, probably more, out there that are, just biblically centered, and then there's so many other texts that, are from other cultures and civilizations, which are also similar and related in some way.
All right, and then the Forgotten Books of Eden.
That was a book put out by a couple of doctors in the early 1900s, and it was a text that was found, and they translated it, and they published it under the Forgotten Books of Eden, and there's two books, the first book of Adam and Eve and the second book of Adam and Eve, and the first book is their initial days in the flesh once they're banished from paradise and placed on the earth, and it talks about how their bodies undergo a transformation, and it's the first days of being on the earth and being away from God and banished from paradise. And the first book goes up until the birth of Cain, and then the second book is all the generations of Adam